Hello, welcome to the first of 4 videos on how to use your financial calculator. This might not be your financial calculator, but we are going to be working through the 4 most popular financial calculators out there. 2 from HP, 2 from TI. So we'll start with this HP, I think it's 10B 2 plus is what it's known as. This is not my go-to. I've saved the best for last, but let's see how I do with this. So this is going to be a short video. And then there'll probably be 3 more videos after this one. So you might be familiar with your financial calculator already. That wouldn't surprise me, but it's been my experience in the classroom with upper level finance students that there are always a few. I don't want to say one, there are always a few, in some cases, many students who aren't as familiar with their financial calculator as maybe they should be. I can tell you, having practiced in finance for 22 years to the day, that these are literally the tools of the trade. Some people don't believe me. I know that Excel's a tool as well, but these are really tools of the trade. And I can just give you a quick story. So in my former life as a commercial mortgage loan officer, we had a shop of 15 to 20 loan officers and other supporting teammates, and pretty much everyone had one of these financial calculators. Actually, one of these financial calculators. This is the one that I'm going to save for last, the best for last, within arm's reach. And so let's start with this HP financial calculator. First, if you're new to financial calculators, I think it's important to point out the time value of money line, for lack of a better word, this top line right here with these 5 basic time value of money inputs. In finance, we're going to be drawing timelines. That's a different thing. We'll be doing our fair share of that in class. This is a different kind of line, a line of the primary time value of money financial calculator keys, but this is where most of the action is going to take place on this financial calculator, the HP 10B2 Plus. That's a mouthful. So I'm always encouraging my students to interpret the keys, and we'll be getting around to this, but at this point, I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the difference between a lump sum or single payment and an even payment. So the PV key here and the FV key, those are keys for single payments. When they're known, that's what you will input. When you press PV, that'll give you a present value. When you press FV, for the most part, that'll give you a future value. We'll get into this here in a little bit. It'll always give you a future value. I don't want to confuse you now, but when we're dealing with the present value of an ordinary annuity, for example, or in particular, present value of an annuity due, the way that I do it, because I don't use begin mode, we'll actually be pressing FV to calculate the present value of an annuity due, but more on that later. I don't want to confuse you with that now if that doesn't make sense. So let's focus on this top line, the time value of money, the basic time value of money keys. We've got the lump sum or the single payment. Those keys are the PV key and the FV key. Let's talk a little bit about payment though. The word payment can sometimes have a negative connotation. Maybe we think of paying a credit card bill, for example. If that's the way you think about payment, I'm encouraging you to please change that viewpoint or that mindset. A payment can be a deposit or an investment. A payment can also be a withdrawal or a receipt. With respect to the latter, we're talking about what was last. We're talking about a withdrawal or a receipt. That's a positive no sign value. So we need to think about how money is flowing. If money is flowing out of our hands, that's a negative sign. Because we need to consider positive no sign values as far as the financial calculator inputs are concerned for payment. And we also need to consider the negative sign when we're dealing with an investment or a deposit. So again, think about how money is flowing, whether it's flowing out of your hands or into your hands. And we're going to be working with that here in just a little bit. So we've got the PV key. We only use that for a single or lump sum payment. The FV key, future value key, this is the present value key. The future value key, same thing. So if we were to receive $100 1 year from now, we would put that in as a $100 no sign positive value. Why? Because we're going to be receiving it. It's going to be coming into our hands a year from now. And we'll work through just a couple examples. And then there's the payment key. So we've got 3 payment keys. Really? But this payment key is for an even or level annuity. So a series of cash flows that are even. In other words, that have the same amount, maybe $100 every year for the next 3 years. This is the key that's going to be used for an even or level payment series. But really, these are 3 payment keys. So that's the way that I want you to start thinking about these keys right here. These are the 3 payment keys, 2 for single or lump sum payments, and 1 for even or level payments. Then we've got what I call the true investment yield. I don't like this per year part of it. I don't want to scratch off that portion of this key as I've scratched off begin mode from some other calculators that I have. We don't really need to get into that now, but just know that this is the interest rate or the investment yield. Again, I don't like the per year part of it, just like I don't like the payment per year part of this button, but that's a conversation probably for another day. So let's start working with this financial calculator. The first thing that we need to do is turn it on. This is a how-to manual. You probably know how to do this already. At least we don't need to worry about this being plugged in, right? We just need to make sure the batteries are working. Here's how we turn it on. Here's how we turn it off. The orange key and back here. It's that easy. So we turn the financial calculator on. We've talked about payments. Let's talk about decimal places, because this is something that we're going to need to care about. So back to this orange key. We're going to press orange, display, and let's just press 9. See how we have 9 decimal places to the right of the decimal point. Let's get our reps in. Orange button, display, 2. So if you were working with a question that asked about the monthly debt service or loan payment, for example, you might want to set the decimal places to 2 because that's enough. We care about 97 cents. We don't want to round up. We don't want to round down, and that'll get you there. For a question, not a problem, for a question that asks about the interest rate or the investment yield, for example. We're going to be working with these in class. You probably want more decimal places to the right of the decimal point. So in that case, you might select 6. Orange, display, 6. So we'll keep it there for now. You're going to be clearing the registers quite often. That's what I would suggest that you do. And it's as simple as pressing orange and clear all. You'll see that is a way to check the amount of the payment, how you've set it up for payments per year. And again, I mentioned I didn't like that. I'm sure I'll tell you about why later in class, but we don't need to worry about that now. So orange, clear all. Okay, there's your reminder. You're considering 1 payment per year. So let's start with the inputs. Remember, we said signs matter. So if you are going to be investing $100 or depositing $100. That's a negative sign. So we first press negative. We get this pending display here, 100. And then let's put that in the PV. Remember, that is a single lump sum. There's no series about that. That is one payment. Remember the 3 payment keys: 2 for a single lump sum, 1 for an even series. Now, before we move on, well, actually, let's do one thing before we move on, and then we'll come back to the recall button, which is another button that I encourage you to use regularly. Let's put in 5 for the true investment yield. Again, forget about the /year. I do not like that part of it. That is just the true investment yield for this real world situation that we're walking through here. I want to now go to the recall button, because this is the button I want you to use a lot. It's right here. Recall that first payment. What was that? $100. See, it's negative. So that's a single lump sum that was invested or deposited. That's the assumption here. Now recall the true investment yield, 5%. In this financial calculator, you have to input this as a percentage. I'm not familiar with every financial calculator out there. I'm trying to get more familiar with these calculators to help you. Some financial calculators may require that you input the true investment yield. Some people might call it an interest rate or an effective interest rate or investment yield as in decimal form. Not the case here. Maybe there's a way to change it. I'm not sure. This is just right out of the box, and it wants the percentage form. So that's what we've done here. Now let's put in 2 for the investment period. 0 for the payment button, because there's not an even payment series contemplated here. And I think it's always good practice to be putting in a value for all of these, actually pressing all of these buttons when you're working with a problem with a time value of money question, rather, that requires that you use this line of keys. So we put in 0. Let's go back through the recall button. Recall N. Okay, 2. We've got a 2 period situation here. Recall 5I. I actually messed that up. Recall 2 periods. Recall the true investment yield, 5%. Recall PV. Okay, it's $100 investment at time period 0 or period marker 0. Recall payment 0, just like we want it to be. Why do we use the recall button so much? Well, because we don't want any stragglers. We don't want any values left over from past math work that we've done. That's another reason why we want to get in the habit of using the clear all button, which is the orange key and then this key right here. And now when we press FV, we're going to come up with the future value. So the future value of $100 invested today, assuming a 5% true investment yield, is $110.25. Let's play around with the decimal places again. So let's get it back to 2, to the right of the decimal point. Orange, display, 2. There we go. That's right where we need to be. Let's change the true investment yield just because we can. 5.05987. There's no reason why I'm choosing this true investment yield. I just want to get more places to the right of the decimal point. And you see that that's not enough. So this would be a great example where we would want to press the orange key, display 6, to know more about this true investment yield. And in this example, let's go back through the keys again. Recall N. We've got a 2-period investment period, a 2-period investment horizon. Recall the true investment yield, 5.05987%. Recall the single lump sum payment made immediately, $100. What about the payment series? There is no payment series here. And when we press future value, Now we get a number that's slightly greater than that. And that makes sense because why? The true investment yield here is higher than 5%. The first one that we used. So of course we're going to get a future value that's a little more. Okay, I'm going to clear out the registers. So orange, clear all. There we go. It's that easy. And we're reminded that we have one payment per year. But again, we don't like that payment per year language, as we'll talk about later in this course, because, well, sometimes multiple payments are made per year. But with this calculator, the thing that you need to know is that is the setting that we want to have. We want this set at one payment per year. That's the way that it comes out of the box, or it should come out of the box that way. But if you wanted to change it, here's how you do it. One orange payment per year. I think that's how it's done. And then we can double check here. We're at one payment per year. We're good. Okay, now let's move on to an annuity question. It's not a problem. It's an annuity question. We're going to clear again. We're going to wear these keys out because it's just good form to do that. Now let's work with an annuity series that contemplates 2 level payments of $100. These are going to be payments that are received. So these are positive, no sign values. $100 for the payment. Payments coming in, so there's a positive no sign value. So we don't have to look around for the plus sign on our calculator. It's just a positive no sign value. It's important to note that for even or level payments or annuities, there's a relationship, the way that I teach this, between the payment and N. So here we're going to put in N at 2. That means there are, let's use the recall button again, 2 $100 payments. They're level. They don't go up, they don't go down. It's $100 twice. 0 for future value. What does that mean? Let's interpret these keys. There's no single payment at the end of the investment period. In this case, that contemplates 2 periods. So imagine the timeline in your mind's eye. There's a 0, there's a 1, there's a 2. There's a $100 value at the end of the first period, right under the 1 on the timeline. There's another $100 value under the 2 on the timeline at the end of this investment period. We're trying to figure out, what is this worth today at the beginning of the investment period? Let's assume a 10% true investment yield. So let's use the recall key again. Recall N. Okay, this is a 2-period investment horizon. Could be years, could be months. We'll get to that later. But the way that we need to think about this now is this is a 2-period investment horizon. That's why I don't like this right here, the interest rate per year, the payment per year, because sometimes we don't always deal in years. So let's talk in terms of periods. This is a 2-period investment horizon. We have 2 payments of $100. We have no lump sum payment at the end of this 2-year investment horizon, in this case, or 2-period investment horizon. The true investment yield is 10%. Now let's compute the present value. The present value of this future cash flow series is $173.55, and I'm rounding. Okay, this is not a lump sum payment, is it? In this case, it's a hypothetical lump sum payment, but it's also the lump sum or single payment that would make you indifferent, and that's a really important word. That's the one word I think about when I think about the time value of money. This is the amount that makes you indifferent between $100 one period from now and another $100 2 periods from now, assuming a 10% true investment yield. So while this is not a payment that is being made today, this is the present value of that ordinary annuity stream of $100. We good there? Hopefully that makes sense. Let's clear our calculator out because it's good form. And again, we're reminded that we have one payment per year. Now let's go on to work with an uneven annuity. So with an uneven annuity, we are going to be using the IRR functionality of the financial calculator. What do we mean by an uneven annuity? Well, that is a payment series with cash flows that are irregular. They're not the same. They're not level. They're not even. Here's how we work with an uneven annuity with this calculator. So again, we're going to clear the registers. We do this a lot, don't we? But I was looking up, I was talking with you, and I had forgotten for a moment whether I had cleared the financial registers. I know I did that just a minute ago, but it's good form to do that. So now let's work with an uneven annuity. Let's say that we have an uneven series that calls for, let's just make it easy, $100 to be received one period from today, $200 to be received 2 periods from today, $300 to be received 3 periods from today, and $400 to be received 4 periods from today. Here's how we're going to input that into our calculator. 0, cash flow, 0. So cash flow 0, imagine on a timeline, this is the cash flow that's right under 0. We don't have any. Now 100 for cash flow 1. So notice the positive no sign value. Is that money that's going to be flowing out of our hands or into our hands? Yep, into our hands. $200 for cash flow 2, $200 that we expect will be flowing into our hands. Notice the positive no sign value. At any point, we can change the decimal places. So let's do that right now. Got it back to 2 decimal places to the right of the decimal point. $300 is our cash flow at time period 3. And then the last is $400 at time period 4. There we go. Let's go back to using, well, let's change it up a little bit. Now let's use an 8% true investment yield. And when we're working with, so notice how we went to that top line, the line of the basic or the primary or the main time value of money calculator keys. Again, this is where most of the action will happen. But when we're dealing with a series of payments that is not even, we need to use the IRR functionality of the financial calculator. So we're going to recall what we put in for the true investment yield. It's 8% in this case. And now we want to calculate the net present value. Net present value is a really easy concept. It's just the present value net of whatever the initial investment was. Here we didn't have an initial investment at time period 0. So the net present value is really a present value. But to calculate that, we simply press orange and then net present value. And the net present value here is $796.22. Now, remember that number, $796.22. And now I want to calculate the net present value, assuming an initial investment of $100. So the number that we're going to calculate here in a little bit is going to be $100 short of that. So $696.22. So we're going to clear the financial calculator. Let's assume that we have an investment opportunity, and it requires that we invest, money's out of our hands, $100 today. It could be any day, but let's call it today. And then going forward, the cash flow series is going to be the same. $100 1 period from now, $200 2 periods from now, $300 3 periods from now, $400 4 periods from now. We're going to also model or assume an 8% true investment yield. And we're going to calculate the net present value, which is what? Just the present value net of the initial investment. Notice that with the first example, we didn't have initial investment. With this example, we have a $100 initial investment. So we're going to calculate not only the net present value, but also the IRR, or the internal rate of return. So let's get about doing that. Again, we're going to clear the financial calculator. Why? It's good form. So now let's press negative. We get the pending display, $100. And we're going to put that in cash flow. That's the cash flow at time period 0. That is our investment. Monies are flowing out. That's why we see a negative sign. Now, what about cash flow 1? We're reminded what we put in there. Cash flow 2, cash flow 3, cash flow 4. Let's go back to using the 8% true investment yield. You may have noticed I like to call that the true investment yield. I don't really like the word interest rate because not all investments pay interest. So I like the term investment yield, or yield for short. But as we'll discuss in this course, the only investment yield, or if you want to use the term interest rate, that will work is the true investment yield or interest rate, because that's the only time value of money friendly interest rate that will allow you to compound monies into the future or discount monies back to the present. Future value, present value. Now let's compute the net present value. So we press the orange key and net present value, and look at what we got here. Notice how it's $100 less. And of course it is, because it's just the present value net of the initial investment. And if you can see it in your mind's eye, remember what happened at time period 0. There was a $100 investment. So the present value of the $100 cash flow discounted back 1 period, and the $200 cash flow discounted back 2 periods, and the $300 cash flow at time period marker 3 discounted back 3 periods, and the $400 cash flow discounted back 4 periods. The present value, we calculated that already. It's $796.22. Why is this $600.96.22? Because it's net of the initial investment. And the initial investment here, as you may remember, was $100. So I'm looking at my cheat sheet. I think that pretty much covers everything that we needed to talk about. I think future videos are probably not going to be this in depth. I don't know if this is really in depth, but we talked about some other things too, and some ideas about the time value of money, which is my favorite thing to talk about as it relates to finance. But we've covered quite a bit. I feel like you have the information at your fingertips now to play around with this financial calculator, if this is the model that you prefer. But there are going to be 3 videos that are going to be coming next in this series. I'm sure you won't watch all of them, but who knows? Maybe you will. Maybe the overachievers out there will. But I expect that you'll just focus on the financial calculator that you prefer to run. So with that, we're going to clear the register. We're going to turn it off, and I'll see you soon.